I never imagined I'd be the kind of man to spy on my wife. Yet there I was, standing outside a hotel room with a keycard in my hand, the truth just inches away. My heart pounded in my chest as 1,000 worst-case scenarios played through my mind. Inside, Jennifer, my wife of nearly a decade, waited. Whether alone or with someone else, I was about to find out. The doubts had started about 6 months earlier, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Jennifer's work trips became more frequent, her late-night texts more secretive. The way she angled her phone away from me or whispered on calls made me question everything. Still, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, a figment of paranoia. But deep down I knew. The signs were there. The sudden urgency in her travel plans, the small lies, the guilty look she gave me when caught off guard. Jennifer, my partner in life, the woman I trusted more than anyone, was hiding something. Now, as I slid the keycard into the lock, my hands trembled. A soft click signaled the door was open. I pushed it ajar, expecting the worst. Another man's shoes by the bed, whispered voices, the undeniable proof of her betrayal. But the room was quiet. Jennifer sat on the bed, typing on her laptop as though nothing were amiss. She looked up, startled at first, but then smiled warmly. "Michael, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone light and welcoming. Her reaction threw me off balance. There was no sign of guilt, no hurried explanations. For a moment, I doubted myself. Maybe I'd let suspicion twist my perception. But as we spent the evening together, dining at the hotel restaurant and sharing quiet conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Jennifer's warm smile and calm demeanor during dinner did little to quiet the doubts swirling in my mind. As she chatted effortlessly, her gestures animated and her laughter ringing out like nothing was amiss, I observed her closely. She looked beautiful, wearing the blue dress that always brought out the color of her eyes. But even as we shared a meal and conversation, my unease lingered. Something felt wrong. Later, back in the hotel room, Jennifer excused herself to take a shower. I sat on the bed, the muted glow of the television casting flickering shadows across the room. My thoughts churned, torn between my love for her and the gnawing suspicion I couldn't shake. Finally, unable to resist, I walked over to her makeup bag on the dresser. The sight of it filled me with a mix of guilt and desperation. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but the need to know the truth overwhelmed me. Carefully, I opened the bag and began searching through it. At first, everything seemed normal: lipstick, mascara, brushes, powder. But then, tucked beneath the usual items, I found something unexpected: a small, unopened pack of condoms. My hands froze. We hadn't used condoms in years. Since my vasectomy, there had been no need. There was no explanation for why she would have them, except for the one I had been dreading. The truth hit me hard. She was cheating. My heart pounded as I stared at the evidence, my vision blurring with a mix of anger, betrayal, and sorrow. All the little signs, the late-night texts, the whispered phone calls, the increased travel, clicked into place. It was undeniable now. I returned the condoms to their place in the bag, my movements slow and deliberate. My hands were shaking as I closed it, my mind racing. When Jennifer returned from the bathroom, smiling as she climbed into bed beside me, I forced myself to act normal. She seemed so at ease, so unaware of what I had found, that it only deepened my fury. That night, sleep eluded me. Jennifer rested peacefully next to me while I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind reeled with questions and scenarios, each one more painful than the last. I wanted answers, but more than that, I wanted revenge. At dawn, while Jennifer was still asleep, I acted on impulse. Returning to her makeup bag, I retrieved the pack of condoms and used a small needle to puncture each one. I worked carefully, making sure the damage wasn't obvious. If she was going to betray me, she wouldn't escape the consequences. When Jennifer woke, I was already dressed, using work as an excuse to leave early. She kissed me goodbye, completely unaware of what I had done. In the days that followed, I avoided her. I didn't call or respond to her texts, letting her wonder what was on my mind. The silence was deliberate. I wanted her to feel the weight of my absence, to question whether I knew. Then, out of the blue, came a call that would change everything. A woman named Karen, hesitant but determined, introduced herself as Greg's wife. She told me she had hired a private investigator and had found evidence of Jennifer and Greg's affair, Photos and videos of them together, laughing and holding hands, at hotels and restaurants. Hearing it confirmed was devastating. The suspicions that had plagued me for months were no longer just fears, they were reality. Jennifer had betrayed me, and there was no going back. Karen suggested confronting them together, a plan that made sense. It would leave no room for lies or denial. Though the thought of working with Karen felt surreal, there was a grim satisfaction in the idea of exposing their betrayal together. The confrontation was carefully planned, every detail designed to leave no room for Jennifer or Greg to escape the truth. Karen arranged for the meeting at a restaurant where she and Greg were supposed to have dinner. I would arrive unannounced, joining Karen as we exposed their betrayal together. The evening came quickly, and as I stood outside the restaurant, my heart raced. Through the window, I spotted them seated at a cozy corner table. Jennifer leaned in close to Greg, her face lit with a smile I hadn't seen in months. He whispered something to her, and they laughed quietly, oblivious to the storm about to crash over them. The sight of them together, so carefree and intimate, stoked the fire of my anger. But I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't about emotion anymore, it was about revealing the truth. I stepped through the door, and the moment their eyes landed on me, their expressions changed. Jennifer's smile froze, her face draining of color. Greg, on the other hand, stiffened, his body language betraying his fight-or-flight instinct. I approached the table, letting the silence stretch as tension thickened in the air. Jennifer's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked like a deer caught in headlights. Greg avoided my gaze, his hand gripping the edge of the table as if to steady himself. Before either of them could speak, Karen entered. Her presence added weight to the moment, her sharp eyes fixed on Greg. Jennifer glanced between us, realization dawning on her face. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. The tension was suffocating. Karen and I stood there, their guilty silence confirming everything we already knew. Finally, Karen broke the quiet. Her voice was calm but cold, cutting through the awkwardness like a knife. She laid out the evidence, photos, videos, timelines, leaving no room for denial. Greg's face turned pale as she spoke, his bravado crumbling under the weight of the truth. Jennifer looked panicked, tears welling up in her eyes, but she said nothing. I waited until Karen was finished before addressing Jennifer directly. My voice was steady, but the anger beneath it was undeniable. I laid out my own suspicions, recounting the months of lies and her carefully crafted facade. Her tears spilled over as she tried to speak, but I cut her off. There was nothing left to say. The truth was undeniable. They had betrayed us both, and now they had to face the consequences. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath as we delivered the final blow. Karen and I made it clear that we were done with their lies, done with their excuses, done with them. Jennifer sobbed quietly, and Greg slouched in his chair, his face a mask of defeat. Karen and I left them there, their guilt and shame laid bare for everyone to see. Outside, the cool night air hit me like a wave, but the sense of relief was fleeting. The betrayal still stung, the pain still fresh. The confrontation had been decisive, but the aftermath was anything but simple. The sting of betrayal lingered, a constant reminder of the life I thought I had and the one that had been shattered. Jennifer tried to reach out in the days following the confrontation, her messages filled with apologies and desperate pleas for forgiveness. I ignored them. I had nothing more to say to her. The divorce proceedings began quickly. Jennifer fought to salvage what she could, our home, the memories we had built, but I refused to relent. I wasn't interested in compromise. The betrayal was final, and I needed to sever every tie. Karen and I stayed in contact during this time, not out of camaraderie but necessity. Her strength during the confrontation had impressed me, and she seemed just as determined to move forward as I was. We exchanged updates about the divorce processes, and though our shared pain connected us, we knew this chapter would close soon enough. Just when I thought I had seen the last of Jennifer, she sent a message that reignited the chaos. "I need to talk to you," it read. "It's important." Against my better judgment, I responded. Her reply came immediately, and it sent a shockwave through me. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, I couldn't think. Jennifer was pregnant? We hadn't been intimate in months. My mind raced as I pieced together the implications. It had to be Greg's child. But a nagging doubt crept in. Before her affair came to light, We'd had one final night together, months ago, but within the realm of possibility. My vasectomy was supposed to make that impossible, but nothing was ever certain. When we met to discuss the pregnancy, Jennifer was a wreck. She looked pale, her hands trembling as she spoke. She didn't know who the father was and begged me for understanding. I listened, stone-faced, as she explained her confusion, her regret, and her fear. But my patience was gone. I demanded a paternity test. If the child was Greg's, the responsibility would fall on him, and I would be free. If the child was mine, a possibility I could hardly stomach, we would figure out the next steps. The days waiting for the results were unbearable. I buried myself in work, trying to keep the what-ifs from consuming me. When the text from Jennifer finally arrived, my heart raced as I read the words, "It's Greg's." Relief washed over me, so intense that I felt like I could breathe for the first time in weeks. The nightmare was over. Jennifer was no longer my problem. The divorce was finalized shortly afterward. I walked away with my dignity intact, determined to rebuild my life from the ashes of our broken marriage. Jennifer faded from my world entirely. Whatever became of her and Greg, I didn't care. Karen and I exchanged a final, polite goodbye. The shared mission that had united us was complete, and there was no need to linger in the past. She returned to her life, and I began the slow process of reclaiming mine. Though the pain of betrayal stayed with me, it no longer defined me. I learned to find strength in the wreckage, to move forward with the knowledge that some people aren't meant to stay in your life. Jennifer had made her choices, and now I was free to make mine. The road ahead wasn't easy, but it was mine to walk. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope for the future, a future untainted by lies and deceit. And if you enjoyed this, feel free to follow for more stories and lessons from life's toughest moments.